Okay, I love malt forward beers, especially like you say that time of year. Just as we're coming out of the summer, things are starting to change. You want that kind of warming fireside thing, and for me, it doesn't get any better than a really good pint of ESB on cask. Um, I'm a massive fan of the kind of bitter family, so ordinary bitter, best bitter. But in the autumn, ESB is the one for me. That little bit of kind of warming alcohol, deeper kind of malt layered character, rich, unctuous, exactly what you want after a long cold walk. If there were a particular brand of ESB that I always go to because I rely on it and I trust it, it's got to be Fuller's ESB. It's a really interesting beer for me. You know, there's the sort of story, and I don't know how true it is, but the story that it's made from the same wort as London Pride. But I absolutely love that beer. If I see it on cask, then I'm a sucker. That's me for the afternoon. I think that the things that sell well for us are the things that people want to drink on a regular basis. So we go through a bit of seasonality here, and certainly as we head into the autumn, things like ESBs, best bitters, that kind of stuff starts to kind of pick up a little bit more. But if I were to look across the entire year, we've got three recipe kits that people just come back to time and time again, and they're all kind of best bitters. So Timothy Taylor, Landlord, although that's is it a best bitter or is it a pale? I'm not really sure. Bass as well, but then probably over the last few years, the 5 Points best bitter that has that's just something that people absolutely love to drink because it's got a bit of modernity to it as well. You know, the way that 5 Points approach the use of fuggles in that recipe, and more recently with the updated version, it's got Ernest in it as well. But those seem to be really popular, and it's because people know that it's kind of beer that you can drink a few of. It's enjoyable to brew. They're kind of relatively straightforward to brew, but they do hit that kind of malty character just as well as you know you would expect the commercial example to. So it's all about layering, and it doesn't really matter what style of malt forward beer you're brewing. It could be an ordinary bitter or a porter or an ESB or something in that ballpark. It's about layering, and a little can go a long way in all of those beer styles. So if we take an ordinary bitter, which when we think about an ordinary bitter, you probably don't think it's that complex, but you add just a little bit of the right crystal malt in there, like a real small touch of something like Simpson's DRC, or a little touch of amber malt, or indeed just a smidge of roasted malt. It can layer the malt complexity in that beer significantly. I do think as well the yeast selection in a malt forward beer is really important because you want yeast driven fruit kind of esters in there that just complement the malt, especially if it's a beer style that's using something like Simpson's DRC, or one of the crystal malts that brings kind of jammy stewed fruit characteristics. You want a yeast that's going to complement that. And for me, actually, I've been leaning quite a lot into using yeast styles that you would normally associate with hazy pale ales. So things like WHC saturated or Lallemand Verdant strain. You use them in those beer styles at the right fermentation temperature, and then allowed the time and the tools to finish bright. I think you get such beautiful kind of fruit character that layers and complements what you've done with the malt. So things like an English barley wine, you get that out of balance and it's not a pleasant drink. Plus, you get it oxidized. It's not a pleasant drink. It just turns to sherry. Old ale, old ale has that slight funk to it. And so trying to balance that with whatever you choose to bring the funk is really challenging. So much so that I've never even attempted to brew that style. Ice bock as well, because there's the whole kind of like freezer distilling thing going on there. Those are big beers, and they're difficult to get right and get in balance. The same can be said with an imperial stout. However, I do think that the biggest challenge comes in when you have to be restrained. So there's a couple of Czech styles in the lineup this year. I think you've got Czech amber lager and Czech dark lager. Anything that requires simplicity, time, and careful selection and brewing, there's nowhere to hide. So those are really difficult beer styles, in my opinion, to absolutely nail. And having brewed quite a lot of Czech pale lagers and Czech amber lagers, for me, they're always really, really technically challenging. And like I said, you've got nowhere to hide. I would enter a Munich Helles. And the reason for that is that I've brewed lots of them. And I think when you're entering a competition, you need to play to your strengths, right? Yes, you're trying to win. That's obvious. You know, we don't enter competitions without one eye on. It would be great to get a prize or a medal or an honorable mention, but you also want to do really well. You know, you want the beer that you put to the judges to be a really good example of you as a brewer, so that you can get the best score and the best feedback. So I always think you need to play to your strengths. We're actually got a project that's going to span probably the next year over on our YouTube channel, the first episode of which will probably come out sort of middle of the autumn. And we're working with, I'm not going to give too much away at this point, but we're going to be working with one of our maltsters to kind of follow the journey of barley, kind of from the field at the point when it's sown, all the way through the growing season to harvest, to malting, and then to brewing with that malt. So I'm really excited to do that. It's something we've never done before. We've done episodic installments on the channel, like when we went over to the Czech Republic and filmed with Budvar. There was multiple episodes in that series, but this is a bit different because it's going to span an entire year and follow the seasons, follow the growing journey, and really give us an insight into that whole process, but also a little bit more around kind of what the challenges that the farmers are facing right now, because you know, we're in our fifth heat wave of this year. We had heat waves all last year. It's having a massive effect on, you know, yields and quality in the fields. So it's going to be a really interesting one to document, but all underpinned by our love of beer, barley, malt, and brewing. Yeah, thanks very much. And like I said, really can't wait to see how the competition goes. And thanks for having us involved once again.